the next conversation, which is really, it kind of dovetails what we talked about, which was the privacy fear factor, right? And, you know, Lori Orlov and I have known each other for, I don't want to date us too long, but it feels like a really long time now, is really how important this sort of privacy and how important adoption of the internet is for the 50 plus market, and the population needs it, and it's going to come to the point where we don't even have, they're not going to even have access to things anymore if they don't use the internet. And I didn't really think about the importance of using the internet. I just figured, so they don't use it, so what? And yet it will completely cut them off from everything. I think the one that surprised me the most was Social Security. You know, when all of these large organizations actually move their entire communications process online, well, how are, you know, the generation that was used to reading the newspaper and getting, you know, mailers, direct mailers in their mailboxes, it's changing. And so I think that this discussion is really, really, really important. And so we joke about, you know, longevity and how the internet can create that. Well, the connectivity is so important. So that's why I think this session is a really important topic. So I want to introduce you again, for those of you who weren't here before, is Lori Orlov, who is a principal analyst and has been covering technology for the boomer and senior market for a long time, was one of the first people to really get out there and say, you know, try to divide up the market and help people understand what technology, how technology will benefit them, but also really analyzing the market for the people that just weren't understanding it. So I'd like to welcome Lori. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this mic on?
Yes.
Perfect. I cannot see the slides, so let's just assume that one is going to show up.
If you lean back, you can see that.
Okay? How about the next one? One more? Oh, is there a clicker? Yeah. Good. Okay, let's go. All right, you probably can't read this, and I can't read it unless I actually stare at it with my glasses somewhat removed. But the gist of this is, when I was your age, all we wanted was a phone to do one thing, and one thing well. And we took our sweet time at doing it. It's a picture of a regular telephone and a smartphone. And what's happened to us is technology has moved very fast, and it's left quite a few people behind. And a few of the statistics about that, which I'm setting up this conversation, this is really going to be more of a discussion between Tom and Mary, and we'll introduce them shortly, is today, even though 86% of the US population is online, after the age of 65, it drops to 74%. And those are likely, the people who are not online are those who earn less, live in less urban locales, and are less educated. As of April 2013, the last time Pew surveyed this, internet adoption of the population age 75 plus was at 47%. And for age 80 plus, it was at 37%. Now, if you think about that for a moment, what is our life expectancy? I don't know if anybody knows this, but if you make it to the age of 65, on average, you will make it to 85, and that's independent of whether you have a serious chronic disease. That's across the board, everybody. Broadband adoption as of April 2013 was 34%, but for the 80-plus population, it was 21%, and that could be due to a variety of reasons, and we'll talk a bit more about the issues associated with that. But the thing is, what is your life like without broadband? So if you I don't know if there's a slide there about the eliminating of paper. Do you have any more slides there? Yeah. Keep going. Nope. Okay. Never mind. I'll just tell you about it. So what happened in 2003, the government passed something called the Paperwork Elimination Act. This caused a major initiative. That's okay. Don't worry about it. This caused a major initiative to start converting a variety of things over the next 10 years away from paper into online. Social Security checks were pretty much fully eliminated in 2013. You now have the ability to get an exception age 90 plus, but you have to apply for it. Paper statements for Social Security were eliminated in 2011. Paper savings bonds were eliminated in 2012. Bank branch closings amounted to 2,599 bank branches closed in 2014 alone. And they're all in favor of moving the customers online. And you all know about Cyber Monday and online-only discounts. So what does the internet really do? It certainly adds years to your life in a variety of ways, and they include nutritional information that you might need, online medical advice, meeting people who share your interests, finding activities and services that vitalize your life, and ways to save money and preserve your assets. It also supports your adult children meeting caregiving needs as you age, supports your self-help efforts to improve your own life, and finally, it helps you generate income long after the age of retirement, which isn't really the age of retirement anymore. So if you think about it, what is our world like now with all of these services that are available only online, and we still have a population that's not online? What's it like for those folks? They can't go to a bank branch in a lot of places. They can't go to a Social Security office. They're basically being cut off and boosting their dependency on other people who do have internet access. And I've often thought we should be able to assign surrogates, that is, people who will access the internet on our behalf if we are no longer able to do so. But we don't have such a program in the United States right now. And anyway, that's my thought about the fact that we actually have a chasm, a connectivity chasm, that has created the digital haves and the digital have-nots, and I think it's a bit of a crisis, but it's only a crisis for the older populations that in fact don't have access and maybe not doing all that much advocacy on their own behalf. And that's my comments, and I'd like to turn it over to Tom.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
And you introduce yourself, please.
Great. My name's Tom Camber. I'm from New York City, but don't hold that against me. And I run a nonprofit in New York called Older Adults Technology Services. And we operate 24 different computer training programs in New York City. We serve about 20,000 people a year in New York, and we've worked in 8 different states, including South Dakota and Arizona and Maryland and a bunch of other places. And what I want to talk about, I want to sort of pick up a little bit on what Lori was talking about around this technology chasm that's affecting older people. And I want to just start by talking about telling a quick story about somebody who I know personally. Her name's Madeline. And Madeline is a 70-year-old resident of Harlem, which is in northern Manhattan. And she has cancer. And about a year and a half ago, Madeline was doing chemotherapy treatments in Manhattan, and she would go on the bus down to the Chelsea neighborhood and do her chemotherapy. And on the way back, she likes fabrics, and she went to a quilting store on 25th Street, which happens to be next door to the Senior Planet Exploration Center, which is the community center for older adults that Oates runs, which is our center. It's the only technology-themed community center entirely devoted to senior citizens in the country. And as she walked by, she looked in the window and saw people learning and using iPads and smiling, and she thought, this looks like a place where I could get a little bit of kind of a happier experience than I just got done with in chemotherapy. And so she came in and sat on the bench. And the center director came over and said, who are you and how can I help you? And she said, I just need a place to sit and kind of feel comfortable. And we said, that's great, and you're welcome. And she began coming every week after her chemo and watching the classes. And one thing led to another, and she said, I'd like to take a class. And all the courses are free. So she took a free iPad class, and she learned how to use an iPad. And one of the things that we do when we do intake at Oates is we don't say, you should take an iPad class. We say, what kinds of things are you interested in doing in your life right now? What projects are you working on? It's not about the technology, it's about the people, right? And so she said she was interested in earning some money because she has a business that she's had sewing tote bags and fabrics, and she sells things at street fairs, but she wanted to do more of that. And so we enrolled her in one of our online entrepreneurship classes where we were teaching people digital e-commerce, and she found out about Etsy, which is a website where you can sell crafts on the internet. And she said, Etsy, that's what I want, because it's oriented toward people just selling stuff directly to consumers, and she takes real pride in sewing every bag herself. And so she started an Etsy account, and at the Exploration Center last year, she suddenly let out a big whoop, and she said, I sold my first bag. I sold something on the internet. And she then figured out how to do fulfillment. And then she took a web design class where she started building websites in Wix. And I remember strolling by her about 4 or 5 months ago, and she asked me to come over, and she said, I'm having some trouble with the JavaScript on my website. Do you think you could help me? And I said, you know what, you are out of my wheelhouse. I have no idea how to do that. And so I had to get a volunteer to come over and find somebody who knew JavaScript. But she's already moved beyond us. And we did, Consumer Electronics Foundation actually sponsors a digital entrepreneurship institute at the Exploration Center. We did the kickoff in, I think it was September. We had about 75 digital entrepreneurs all over the age of 60, most of them in their 70s and 80s, who want to start businesses. And Madeline was the keynote speaker. And she was talking about how you fulfill your bags through, she keeps her UPS account on Madison Avenue, so that when she sends out your bag, it says it comes from Madeline on Madison Avenue. And she's like, I get to feel like I've got the Madison Avenue address, and she's coaching everybody on it. But she's really thrived with this, and it's really given her sort of a sense of purpose and a real opportunity to be a leader amongst other older adults. And so, I've learned a lot from working with her, and the reason I'm telling this story is because, the question of how does the internet add years to your life, or can it? When you talk about somebody like Madeline, who might be facing what a lot of people are typically facing as they get older, is some health challenges, some mobility, some financial challenges, but they're having to kind of rebuild their systems a little bit. And I come from this sort of community background where I'm a nonprofit leader. We started out in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn just teaching classes to people in community centers. And now 10 years later, we have this very robust citywide program serving tens of thousands of people. We also have a website at seniorplanet.org, which I don't know if anybody here has ever seen, but definitely check out seniorplanet.org, which is a website where we have content. We call it Aging with Attitude. We had over 2 million people, unique individuals, visit the site this year. And the content is everything. I think the top article today is about Viagra and about whether or not we have a sex columnist, Joan Price, who talks about older adults and their personal relationships and how they're handling those things as we get older. But we also talk about things like travel and financial security, and a lot of the articles are really interesting. And we've sort of been able to grow this program around people like Madeline because older adults are looking for that sort of third act in their lives. They're looking for how we are going to live in a different way. And the technology, as Lori is talking about, the technology is essential to being able to live a really complete life today. And so as a nonprofit, we've started programs at Oates for, originally we started just teaching computer classes, but we very quickly realized that it's really about what people get out of it. So to begin with, first of all, there was this big question of, do senior citizens want to learn how to use computers? And a lot of people said they just didn't think people would come to classes, especially since our classes are our courses go for 20 sessions. So to get through an Oates basic class, you have to show up 20 times. And when we opened the Exploration Center, we didn't know if anybody would want to come and take the classes because we'd never run our own site. And this was in 2013. So can you back up on that first slide, please? Hello? Can you put the first slide up, please? Don't go to the second one yet. Thank you, that one. The group of people on the middle photograph here that's the front of the Exploration Center at 8 o'clock in the morning in October of 2013, when we did our first open enrollment, first come, first serve for Oates classes there. The session you weren't even supposed to start till 10 o'clock, and we showed up to open the center, and there was a line of like 200 people down the sidewalk like it was Rolling Stones tickets. And my director called and said, oh my God, what are we going to do? There's so many people. And I said, just start the thing now and start enrolling people, and let's get as many as we can. We signed up every class. We had 350 people on the waiting list right away. There's just such a need for people to get the kind of support and engagement. And it really is, people see it as this chasm like Lori's talking about. You have to be able to become digitally literate in order to become a fully functioning member of the mainstream right now. That's not to say that people who don't know how to use a computer can't use a buddy or what was was your idea? A sponsor, Proctor, which I think is a great idea. But you need to engage in some way because these are the tools of modern life now. So the first thing is that there's a lot of demand. The second thing is we've been getting a lot of data back from the people that take the courses. The vast majority are using the internet for health research. They are learning a lot about conditions and being able to empower themselves as they deal with the medical establishment and their doctors. Secondly, a lot of people are very interested in tracking health, so we're getting a lot of people that are asking about starting to adopt these Nike Fitbands and things like that. That's sort of a little early stage, but it's coming up. The most popular use for the technology is still social engagement. Seniors are in a different phase of life. They're having to rebuild their social networks all the time in a way that younger people don't in the same way. So they're using Facebook and they're using email and they're using the internet to connect to people and rebuild social networks a lot. And then finally, the financial security things that are coming up are very, very popular, so people are able to live more successfully. The final thing that I would just add, and then we can just do Q&A, I don't want to take up too much time, but is really that in terms of adding time to our lives, it's not just on an individual basis. One of the things that we've learned that's really powerful is that the technology is creating a new platform for community amongst older adults. So just one example, Oates had a financial contract with the federal government that ended, and we had a $1 million budget gap in our budget where we were going to lose a lot of programming because we didn't have federal resources anymore because it was part of the stimulus package. We asked if the seniors would come down and do kind of a rally at City Hall to support the program. We had hundreds of people show up in the pouring rain at City Hall with signs to encourage the city government to support the program, and they created a lot of the budget changes that enabled us to keep the center open. So there's been a lot of connection that way, and then a lot of the seniors that are getting online now at our New York program people are doing Tumblr accounts, they're hashtagging, they're connecting to people in Washington, D.C. and other locations where we're training. It's creating more of a platform for people to become more socially engaged with more of an intention of being sort of civic activists. And I can talk at great length about the research here, but there's a lot of research that talks about the importance of staying socially engaged and staying, avoiding depression and things like that. There's several studies that have used large data sets that have linked internet use to lower rates of depression among seniors. So the ability to make those connections for people is actually giving them more of a lease on life and reducing things like morbidity and some of the health challenges seem to be things that you can address with more of that connection. So I do believe that it really does make a difference for people to be engaged. We really come from a sort of community activist point of view on this and are sort of building what's becoming a multi-state operation there. But it's been really exciting and kind of rewarding as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. That was great. Mary is going to complement that with quite a different experience, but in fact very, very similar in many ways.
So it's wonderful to be here. This is my, I think, 7th year of being here. I started when it was Silver Summit, so it's nice to see the change. Have any of you heard me speak before? A couple of people. Okay. So I was the founder of SeniorNet, so I sort of share with you. Back in '86, when I was 30, I'm now 66, so when I started this, we had Commodore VIC-20s, and I wrote a book called Computers for Kids Over 60. I'm now 66, and I carry around my new exciting iPhone that tracks how many steps I take here at CES and lets me call Uber and things like that. And I have my Samsung, which I'm sort of learning how to use. And then I have my iPad. So if you look in my backpack, I've got 4 cords, and I'm usually out of power with one of them. So I'm kind of lusting after Lori's new power connectivity device. But the issues when we started SeniorNet were about access to information, access to job skills. The killer app was intimacy and connection, even though it might mean sending an email on your Commodore VIC-20 to your grandchildren in college and having them respond, "Dear Grandpa, please send money." And so the only companies in the business ecosystem at the time were Microsoft and Intel. there was no Google at the time. And then Apple, when we started, said you shouldn't use those membrane computers. You should have, let's test whether the 2C is better than the Mac. So that was kind of what it looked like 30 years ago. We had 100 centers around the country. So I totally understand the demand. One of the points we always tried to make with SeniorNet is you have the world right out in front of you. And it's not just about the technology, it's about the power and knowledge and talent base of older people. So lots of things here talk about the technology. There are a few, like in this room, where we talk about the knowledge and contribution of older people. And thus I share Lori's concern, and she's a gift to the industry, really, for shedding a light on the people that might be left out. Because it's not just your Social Security check, or it's not just being able to talk to your banker. Many banks discover that older people want to come to the bank because that's socialization. If you're a widow or a widower, which is the loneliest person in the world, you know, going to the bank, you'll stay for an hour and a half, you know, have coffee and donuts. Some of the most successful banks had SeniorNet classes in the bank branches. So one thing is bringing the access and talent of older people. Another is connecting their world together. So in 2002, I started an MFA. Well, I started a venture-backed company called Third Age and sold that to Ancestry. So I've raised a lot of money in the field, over 130 million in sponsorships and venture capital. We are at a very interesting pivotal point. There were two VC firms, two people here representing a shift in terms of venture capital coming into this marketplace. So corporate VCs like United Healthcare, Intel Capital, and independent venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, as well as angels, there's a tsunami of interest in funding great ideas in this space for the first time ever. So we run this venture capital competition every June. We've had 12 years of winners. Those have all built companies. One's a $70 million company now in the pet plan insurance space. So in 2015, what does it look like today? Well, my digital, when I was a professor, I'm still a professor, but I used to try and publish in journals. Now I try and have Twitter followers. I negotiated for my new car based on my social imprint. So I said, you can't give me that price. I have a large Twitter following. You need to give me a lower price. And I got it down like $1,000 based on that. So when we think about accessing services, as soon as I got this connected, and it's an intergenerational market, because I wouldn't go to the AT&T store without a reverse mentor, i.e. my son, explaining to me how to negotiate and what we really want on this. And what do we want on this? You don't really want us driving at night, especially after a martini, not at 66, not even with the self-driving car. So Uber and Uber Lyft and Lyft Hero and Silver Ride, these are really important services, as is TaskRabbit is an important service, or Airbnb. So services are going to really be important. Secondly, your student that's getting a job is not the only one who wants to make money online on the internet. So it's the rise of entrepreneurship. Lori's an entrepreneur, Jill's an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We're this class of a lot of boomers who 401k became a 201k, and they had to finance their longevity or their son-in-law's longevity because he was downsized, or an adult child that has student loan debt but had a disappointment in graduating in 2007 where there were not jobs available for people. So it's not just because we're mildly interested, it's because we don't have confidence in Washington to fund our longevity at the same level. How many of you think Washington's going to increase dramatically your Social Security and your pensions going up?
Right.
I joke with my friends. I said, you know, I'm not worried when I go from this world because all my friends are going to be lined up with casseroles because my husband has hair and a pension, and they want to know what his favorite kind of casserole is already. And really, someone delivered a casserole to my husband last week, and I'm not even gone. And so, you know, the notion of what are the brands that we use today in a focus group at AARP about a month ago, we asked 10 entrepreneurs. Amex is like their biggest brand. They spend more money on Amex and Marriott than almost anything else. So these are the brands that are here today. Now, Steve Jurvetson of Draper Fisher Jurvetson said, we can't predict what companies are going to be the biggest movers in the next 10 years. We didn't have Google 12 years ago. You know, so what are the brands that are going to be important to this? Now we see Samsung coming to the table. Intel's at the table. GE's at the table. Philips is at the table. So looking ahead, Jody Holtzman, who spoke so eloquently this morning, said, what do we see in the future? And I said, well, here's what I think in the future. I think it takes 7 years to build any business. I think it's a global business ecosystem in the longevity economy. So I think it's a given there's the rise of China, and look at Alibaba and how much money that's going to have. But I'm putting bets, just as Vegas we can bet. I'm betting on the 75-year-old power broker woman who has great influence on every sector, from housing to retail. Do you not think we spend money on beauty? I was stopped 4 times getting to my room of someone wanting to give me samples for my skin and my eyes and my wrinkles. And so when we look at what businesses are going to pivot into this space, it's going to be businesses that see the business opportunity of brands that relate to longevity through water, through food, through housing, through technology. And we're going to see the growth of online collaboration tools like we've never seen before, so that we can become a coach and work from the studio in our home, and we can continue to build a business as we reach 50, 60, 70, 80, and I have some 90-year-olds that I get business plans from who are beginning to think about their ideas. So that's kind of a look backward 30 years, a look at today, and a look at what we're going. So if you're thinking about pivoting into this business space, you're not making a mistake. It's as big as China, and you have a role to play and money to make, but the bigger gift would be the good work you could do in the lives of older people, ourselves included. Thank you.
All right. So at this point, we'd like to open it, I think, to questions and discussion from the audience. Unless any of us want to ask questions of each other, I think we're good. Okay. Let's we got our first question.
And ask who they are.
For
And
the
could you give your name,
older
please?
school technology. So
Could you say what your name is,
your
too?
organization, I mean, older technology, right?
Yeah.
Your company.
Oh, Oats, yes.
Yeah, Oats. So your company still operated through government fund, or you made a profit already?
We're a nonprofit organization, so the corporate structure that Oats operates under is, in the United States, it's a tax-exempt system. There's an opportunity you can incorporate as a tax-exempt charitable organization. So that's the corporate structure that we operate under. Some nonprofits do charge for their services, and they can create cash flow from the customers. Our model has been that we give away the classes for free, and then we raise money from government, but also from corporate sponsorships. So we received, just in the last year, we're funded by the Macquarie Foundation, which is an Australian investment bank that just gave us $500,000. And then Comcast and Verizon and Sony, the Consumer Electronics Foundation, all of those organizations donate money to our programs, both because they have a social purpose, but also, frankly, we're getting a lot of seniors online who are now becoming customers for Comcast and Verizon and all of those businesses and Sony. They have a lot of purchasing power. So there's a sort of a natural allegiance where we're doing what we think of as doing good, but they're also, everybody's sort of doing well because there's more commerce created from it. And then we're also able to get government resources for sort of annual contracts to keep the centers open throughout New York City and now upstate and rural communities as well, where we can bring people online and give them free classes. So it's kind of typical nonprofit where you put together all the different parts of the puzzle to keep things alive every year.
As Mary has always called it, the public-private partnership.
Yes.
Yes.
And has anybody?
And who are you?
I'm Larry Diamond. I'm from Montreal.
Great.
Encroaching on the American scene,
We won't hold that against you.
and getting involved in the last 2-3 years in designing in seniors, and going to all of the sessions, all kinds of conferences. and designing something now that I'm trying to launch. But one of the questions I have is everybody talks about seniors and being the largest section, and I'm 70, I'm a senior, although I don't look too bad for 70. What about the cohort, the beautiful minds, and all these kids in plug-and-plays, and all the Stanford kids coming out, who are all doing fantastic things, but really not interested in the senior area?
Can I?
Sure.
Well, go ahead.
I'm just going to mention that the Stanford itself runs a center on longevity. And yeah, okay, so they actually have a whole research program there that is about older adults and gerontology. But Mary, you want to make a comment on this?
Well, I kind of disagree with that because the young people, especially in medical schools across the country, that are beginning to look at the medical device marketplace, we see this every single year we run this competition. It's been a young person that's won, and it's the most value creation seems to me to be coming out of the medical device industry. And so that's where we see a lot of the companies get funded. And we have a lot of compassionate young people who are very dedicated. And I guess the other trend, which you guys could comment on too, is that many people get into this space because of a personal story. They have a parent with dementia. They had a sister, CareLinks had a sister with MS, and he went from being, Sherwin Check went from being a hedge fund manager to creating the leading portal for finding caregiving. So it's often that mid-career incident that's causing some women, in fact, to move out of the workforce and to build businesses in this area.
I might just add one slightly different angle, which is that I feel like it's important to talk about ageism at moments like this. The statistics on geriatricians are kind of alarming in the sense that there's an increasing need for geriatric-focused medical specialists, but the numbers of them are actually declining, and there are free funding opportunities for people that go unaccepted every year because we just don't have enough people specializing in geriatrics. Same thing goes even for social workers. The majority of social workers will work with geriatric clients over the course of their careers, but only I think 5 or 10% actually specialize in geriatrics. And one of the challenges there is we live in a very ageist society, and there's still a lot of negative stereotyping that is prevalent in the media and in our daily discourse that makes, that we really need to confront and overcome. I think that we're right at the sort of beginning or starting to accelerate some of the awareness of issues like that, and people are beginning to look at older adults and say, wait a minute, you know, old is the new kind of cool factor. You know, we have people lying about.
80 is the new 60.
Well, it is. It's like we have people lying about their age to get into the Senior Planet Center
Right.
because it's the cool place to be.
Or getting an ARP card.
Yeah,
So one last little comment or question is there any overt, you know, I forget the name of the gentleman from PayPal who gives $100,000 to any kids who don't want to go to university for a year? I forget who it is, but he's...
Pierre Omidyar? Pierre Omidyar?
No, there's another. Anyways, why are there not overt programs where they direct them into, well, you're going to get the 100,000, but you got to develop an application or whatever for seniors? Like, why is ARP not disseminating information
just for young
about
people or for anybody? Because there's the Purpose Prize.
what?
There's the Purpose Prize, but that's for older people.
Well, also, ARP has just launched a major initiative for technology learning, which Terry Bradwell has spearheaded. He's the CIO, and they're doing workshops around the country. So, but I think...
And they're intergenerational. They work with Mentor Up.
I think that the issue that you're talking about is still true. You know, that we can say that there are companies and young people getting involved in this, but still more money will go to children, more money will probably go to animals than to older adults. And so the frail elderly are still an important segment to pay attention to. And also, isn't this the year 2015? The boomers are now past 50. So we're now seeing the next generation turn 50. So I don't think you could build a marketing strategy or a business strategy without it being an intergenerational strategy. Because even though you see seniors and boomers paying for their down payments for their kids' homes, I mean, 69% are financially supporting adult children and grandchildren, and a large number are raising grandchildren. So the financial pressures on the generation is partly what's spurring the technology awareness and learning.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the multi-generational technology opportunity or the business opportunity that's inherent in this? Yes.
What do you mean, the multi-generation opportunity?
So what Mary's describing is the fact that there are now, we live in a society, which is fairly unusual in the United States, to have actually 3 generations and maybe even 4 generations in a family. So you have the kids, their parents, their grandparents, and maybe their great-grandparents. And some of them are living now. There's a growing population of people actually living all in one house and trying to coexist together. So I think that's really that's the multi-generational opportunity, is how can you support a world of families that in fact have so many levels of age. But the other thing about that is many grandparents are now learning about technology from their grandchildren. There's almost a skip generation. So it's the grandchild that's actually bringing the grandparent online in order to be able to share Facebook, Skype, YouTube, and so on.
So there are something like 60 million grandparents. If you have a new grandchild, we're going to see my sister's new grandchild on Friday and Saturday morning. We haven't seen him yet. And, but, Skype becomes suddenly very important in the life of a grandparent. So the grandparents are going to influence those purchases, from the car that's safe, to the toys, to the technology products, to the financial services products like 528K accounts. That's 60 million people that are grandparents, and I think that's a new blue ocean water economy. The 44 million that are caregivers, you could be a caregiver at 44 influencing the purchasing of your parent, or you could be a spousal caregiver. Or as Clint alluded to earlier, you could have a child with behavioral issues or be the parent of someone coming home from Afghanistan. So these technologies and understanding the purchasing ecosystem are really important to your marketing strategy, because the purchase influencer may not be the senior themselves, and the seniors may have way more buying power across the segment than you know.
Hi, I'm Deanne. I was just thinking about the fact that when my mom was alive and in an assisted living environment, it was a wonderful opportunity for them to provide these types of classes. I don't know where she was, they just didn't do it. But I'm wondering whether some of the larger assisted living CCRCs are jumping into that market to offer that to their population.
Yes, they are. It's increasingly you're seeing that linkage between the different kinds of institutions that work with older adults, but assisted living specifically has been a very robust growth area. There's an organization based in Boston called Connected Living, which used to be called My Way Village, and they have, I think, several hundred. David, would you know the answer to this? Assisted livings that they operate in, where they have a very well-designed training program, and they specialize in that market. And then my nonprofit, actually, our first program ever was in an assisted living, and we do a lot of work with rehabilitation centers like Jewish Home Life Care in New York, where people are coming out of a rehabilitation environment. We're giving them some free classes as they're kind of hanging out around the rehab center for a while, and they often go home and pick up the internet from there. So, and actually David Drink's here as well. They run programs in Queens with self-help community services there, where they have a thing called the Virtual Senior Center that's not only running technology at the center, but also setting the senior up at home with a bidirectional video device so that person can actually participate in activities at the center even though they're still in the apartment. So there's a lot of that growth going on right now, and I think we're really just scratching the surface when you think about the number of CCRCs in different centers out there.
I think, Dan, your insight is right from a marketing point of view, too. So there's a company called SingFit, which provides music therapy for patients with dementia. The companies that have implemented that into their assisted living have found it to be so popular that they only take people on tours when they're doing their SingFit music therapy classes. Because, well, Lori, you know more than anyone, because Lori was, we should share your story.
Well, I was a pianist. But
Yeah, but what song did you play in assisted living?
oh, Someone to Watch Over Me. The ultimate assisted living song.
I
I don't know why I thought that was ironic, but
I love that story because what happens, the reason they do the marketing that day is because everyone's faces light up when they sing. And so here's a program that really is, young entrepreneurs building this program. But as several people were talking earlier today, it's slow to adopt in those programs because the people that run them are so overwhelmed with everything else they're doing. So even companies like Posit Science and others that have tried to get distribution through assisted living, it's been a little slower than some of the other places. But we're working on a new development now in Northern California, and I'm looking at having a great SysOp, a great wine bar, a great technology center. So write to me in about 2 years, and I'll let you know
the wine bar being
about that.
particularly key.
But that's why we're looking at the wine country for
Yeah.
this. But there are going to be some new examples like that.
Anybody else want to comment? Or I think the interesting thing about assisted living is while we're sitting here, the average age in assisted living is moving up. And I think it's 86 now. People are moving in at a later age, not independent living, I'm talking about assisted living. And part of the reason they're doing that is because life expectancy being what it is, people want to know that they're going to have enough money to pay for it for the number of years that they may wish to live there. And so they put it off and put it off and put it off. And this is creating, I think, quite a pressure point on the assisted living industry, which wasn't really prepared to have as frail a population as actually is moving in. Their setup wasn't really set up for that, and so it's a big pressure. We'll see what happens next. I'm not really sure what will happen in the industry. It's actually given rise, however, to the home care industry, which is an exploding, one of the fastest growing job categories in the U.S. right now is home care, some of which is being used to supplement staff in assisted living.
But I think it's really worthwhile talking about technology for aging in place. And when you were talking about the student using SD, sometimes we think that let's get technology for aging in place so we can monitor. People don't think about getting technology for aging in place so people can pursue their passions, so they can earn income. And there are companies like a new startup called Geekatoo, which provides technology help, sort of like an Uber driver, but technology help that can go out and help you get wired and connected. And I think one of the big opportunities are going to be system operators, because we have so many entrepreneurs. Who's going to fix the printer? That's what I worry about.
Well, that's where the Geek Squad has really made such a difference, and people are willing to pay for it, really, to come to your house and set up your network and so forth. Anybody else want to comment, weigh in, threaten, wish us well?
Throw your phone at us.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming.